Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mountain Talk. It's the day after Christmas and I'm recording this intro to the fourth episode as I gear up outside of Keystone Resort in Colorado. I spent yesterday here skiing and it was subpar conditions, but one of my better days of skiing this year. Last night I stayed at a hostel here in Silverthorne about 10 minutes away called The Pad. If you're ever on the I-70 corridor and need a place to stay after skiing or road tripping, I highly recommend it. Shout out to Katie for hooking that up and making me feel loved during this holiday season. And for everyone who gave me birthday wishes and helped me winterize my high ace. So huge shout out for that. Anyways, this episode, number 4, is all about climbing. Alex and I sat down on a road trip on our way to Salt Lake City in early December, and we talked about a lot of things. We started out with recruitment pulls, injury prevention, eccentric versus concentric movement. We talk about isometrics. We talk about both of our training plans over the past couple weeks. We talk about pushing mental barriers, flipping the switch, growth mindsets, progression as mountain athletes. We talk about training structures. We talk about strength and power, pushing boundaries, and basically climbing in your own way. So we have a lot that we talk about here. There's some science, some nitty-gritty stuff. Alex has a background in anatomy and physiology, especially as it relates to exercise science, and you can hear that really shine in this episode. It was recorded in early December, and there will be links to C4HP. We resourced Tyler. There'll be links to that in the show notes, as well as Chelsea and Alex's social medias, the people we reference here. The rest of this audio, it will be unedited and unrehearsed, and it is also the last of the subpar audio quality at full length. Alex and I talked about it, and we're going to reunite under better conditions, so bear with us as you listen to our conversation, and please reach out with questions, comments, concerns, or what we should talk about in the future. Without further ado, the next episode of Mountain Talk.
You go first.
Yeah.
Ladies first.
Ladies first, baby. As the southerly gentleman. All right, so Alex and I are driving south on...
This is ice.
We're driving towards Vegas from Salt Lake City.
What is this road? I think it's 70.
Going to Red Rocks.
Not 70.
Going to Red Rocks for like 7 days.
Yeah. Week-long climbing trip in the sun.
Bouldering. We're going to be pad people for a week.
I'm always a pad
I was about to say I'm a pad person.
I'm forever a pad person, even though I suck.
So I'm going to be living my full pad person life, and I think net positive pad person overall.
You're always somehow we're on the same level, even though you don't boulders, and I boulder like year round. So it's so fuck you. You're always somehow keeping up.
Well, one thing that I feel like has helped me keep up, and that you introduced me to, was recruitment pulls.
Yeah.
And Chelsea, shout out, also has been beating this drum towards me. So maybe what we're going to do is we'll talk about a couple of the training tools that we've been playing around with recently, and we'll definitely talk about some training boards, how to use them as well. Mood board specifically for me, but I think you can use any training board. And then we'll have a lot of rants from there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I guess if you want to start, give me the elevator speech on recruitment pulls, theory, why do them?
Nice. So this is all going to be regurgitated from Tyler Nelson, Camp 4 Human Performance, all his research that he's done, and his training methodology. Incredible dude, Salt Lake local. He has been a huge influence on my approach to training, and specifically climbing training.
C4HP.
At C4HP on the Instagrams. And he has incredible content that's mostly free. You can also pay to get better content, like do consultations with him. I think it was 2 seasons ago, down to Red Rock Canyon a lot, and I hurt my finger. Remember when I hurt my ring finger? I had like a sprained A2 pulley in my middle finger, I think. And immediately went to Tyler, learned so much about rehab through him, and then he put me on a training plan, and I saw such quick improvement. Immediately, or I say immediately, healed my finger. It took a while, but it was way quicker than I thought it would be, because we have this tendency to like, we hurt something, let's stop climbing on it, and that's actually the worst thing you could do for most finger injuries, or injuries dealing with tendons and ligaments. You need to stress that structure to actually make it heal. And so that was kind of mind-blowing for me, because I didn't know that that's how it worked. I don't really want to get into like all the rehab shit, but like, so that was my first real entrance into his type of methodology around training. And so he's always coming out with like new research and new ways of training. And he just recently did a study that you can find. He talks about it on Neely Quinn's Training Beta podcast. I think they even talk about it on his own podcast. Yeah. So it's Camp for Human Performance has their own podcast where they talk about recruitment pulls, and it's based on research that was just done. That to give you like the short of it, like recruitment pulls are more effective at gaining finger strength than hangboarding, because I hope that I do this justice, because when we are loading our fingers on a hangboard, so say we've strapped some weight to ourselves and we're going to do max hangs on a hangboard. It's a pretty common one that most people do. I did it for years. I know you've done it a lot. When you're pulling onto a hangboard, you are eccentrically loading your fingers. So if you don't know what an eccentric load is versus a concentric load, well, let's go over those first. Yeah. So if you imagine, let's just take bicep curls for example. So like, you're standing there and you're going to do a bicep curl. If you curl the weight up to your shoulder, the bicep is contracting, so that is a concentric action with your bicep. So a good way to equate that is contraction, concentric. They both start with C. They're similar words. That's how I remember it.
It's a good way to do it, actually.
And so you're curling your fist or your dumbbell to your shoulder. That's concentric. When you're letting it down, so if you're letting it down slowly from your shoulder all the way down, that's eccentric. The muscle is elongating. Eccentric, elongating. Another easy way to remember it. If you are, so say you go halfway in your bicep curl, and you're just going to hold that. That's an isometric, where the muscle is not moving. And there's a couple different types of isometrics. One is holding a weight that you could move easily, but just holding it in place. And then there's another type of isometric where you are trying to move something that is immovable. And so that, imagine you have like a chain set up to the floor, and you're trying to curl this chain to your shoulder, but it's not moving. So that, I wish I could remember the term. There's like a yielding isometric, and then
we could just call it
There's two different types of isometrics. One is you're trying to move an immovable force, and the other is not an immovable force, essentially.
You're just holding it.
So, and they all have different benefits, and they all have different effects on the muscle.
Which I think, we'll talk about isometrics after as well.
Yes.
Because that's been really nice in my training.
So basically, with hangboarding, when you're going to load your body on a hangboard, you are eccentrically loading your fingers and your forearm muscles, because you grab onto the board and then you let go, and you're trying to resist your hand from opening up. Well, let's say we're doing a half crimp grip, where our fingers, most of our fingers are going to be about 90 degrees. We're trying to hold that and resist the eccentric action, resist our fingers from opening up. So this is not inherently bad. This can actually, you can obviously get a lot of strength from this, but it causes lots of fatigue to the muscles, the tendons, and doesn't necessarily have as much transferability to climbing, because when we're climbing, most of the time, if you imagine you like latch a hard grip rail and then have to move off of that, you are not necessarily hitting it and then like softening into that and trying to resist your hand from opening up. You are you're actively pulling down because you have to move around it. And so I think what I gathered from his research, he talks about it, is that doing these recruitment pulls, which we'll talk about how those are done, just has more transferability in climbing because you're actually trying to pull your fingers down. You're doing a concentric action with your fingers instead of an eccentric action. Essentially.
You're trying to close your fingers rather than resist them opening.
Exactly.
Also, one thing about that, before we leave the hangboarding, just for a second, is that also your body's ability to hold in eccentric forces is like 50% higher.
Way higher.
So it's way higher than you could actually hold in a concentric muscle move.
Right.
So I think that was one thing, is that's probably what, I mean, I don't know this, but it probably contributes to the repair being a lot longer.
Yes. Yes, that's a good point that I didn't bring up. And that's why also, doing like, he talks about doing like weighted pull-ups, how if you can start at the top of a weighted pull-up with a ton of weight on you and do eccentric, like letting your body drop to the bottom of a pull-up, you can do so much more weight than you could a straight pull from the bottom. Our muscles, it's just the way our muscles work. They work really well when they're in elongated positions or they're elongating. It's a lot harder for a muscle to produce force when it's contracting than when it's elongating. It's just the way the structure of our body and our skeletal muscular system works. So with recruitment pulls, you're trying to isolate your finger flexors. So the way I have set it up in the past, and the way I think you also set it up, is
also for people who think just when you think finger flexors, just think of closing your forefingers, like your index to pinky, into a fist. Like just moving your forefingers.
Like put your hand on your forearm and close your fist, and you can feel your finger flexors working. They're on the bottom part. They're on your forearm, and then your extensors are what are going to move your fingers back, like you're trying to move the tops of your fingers back towards your elbow. And so we're talking about the finger flexors.
So the recruitment pull is very specific on the finger flexors. So we need to make sure in whatever way we do it, we're focusing the most energy or most recruitment on just those finger muscles as opposed to anywhere else in our body. So that would probably be a good baseline to start. I realize this is audio, so it's going to be kind of hard for us to depict what it is.
Realizing it's harder to describe it.
Also have pictures and videos in the show notes.
Nice.
FYI.
Nice. So you basically want to eliminate like your big pull muscles, like your lats, because like, so what I use is a 20 millimeter edge. I think Tyler prescribes doing bigger than a 20 millimeter edge, but I don't have that because I just have a flashboard. And so I just have been using now the biggest edge. And you want to attach that to something that's not going to move. So you want that attached directly to a bar that, it might have a little bit of flex to it depending because of the material that it's connected with, but you're not going to be able to pull that past a certain point. And so then I like to kind of set up my elbow to be at like 90 degrees. You can also do this straight arm, where your arm is straight. It'll depend on the setup, and it's easier to see in like a video or a picture.
It might be, I think maybe the easiest way to describe it audio way is actually like the standing style. So if you don't have a lot of setup for this, what you can do is use, like if you have a training area at your gym or whatever, they typically have some sort of free weight ability to stack plates. If it's a climbing gym specifically, so like just a way.
I don't know what those things are called. You put the weights on it, and then it's attached to like a steel thing where like the weight's not going to move, and whatever you're attached to is not going to pull through the weights.
Or even simpler, think of girth hitching a 2x4 and standing on a 2x4. Okay.
You're creating something that's
not
immovable.
Yeah. It's immovable.
Yeah.
And so the standing way, this is the way I started just because I didn't have much fucking facility. It was a van. So you take a 2x4 or something like that, wrap a double link sling around it, girth hitch it, attach the flashboard is what I have too. Also those little tension blocks, you'll see those at the gym. Attach that at a length that when you're standing on the 2x4 or the immovable object that you're pulling from, your arm is fully elongated.
Fully straight.
Your elbow is straightened out.
There's not a bend to your arm.
Yeah. And then my fingers, I'm doing it, I think Alex is doing it at a half crimp position as well.
Yep.
So our fingers, index through pinky, are at 90 degree closure, and we're on the biggest edge we have. And standing there, I just try to close my fingers and put force, imagining pulling that flashboard to my palm, which can't happen.
You're trying to break that shit.
Yeah.
You know? And you want to do like an easy ramp up. You know, you don't want to just like as fast as you can, because the goal, at least in exactly this we're talking about, is not necessarily like how quickly you can produce force, but like how
much force you can produce.
Yeah, we're not talking speed right now. We're just talking about pure strength in your fingers. And so you would do like, you know, we do it a couple different ways, the way we structure it. I kind of do repeater style, where I'll do one pull and I'll kind of count down 5 seconds. And so the first 2 seconds is me like ramping up to full effort, and then the last 3 seconds I'm pulling as hard as I can. And then I'll switch sides, do the other hand, and then I'll kind of go back and forth, trying to do like, I usually do about 4 on each hand, then I'll take a rest, and then I'll do that like 3 to 4 times. It's pretty loose. Like I kind of do it depending on my feel.
Yeah.
If I'm feeling strong and I'm feeling good, then I'll do more. And you know, getting the Tindek, the measuring device that you can actually attach between the block and whatever immovable object you have, shows how much force you're producing. So then you can watch that on your phone as it's happening, and once your force starts to drop, then you can stop, because you're not like it's just better to just
your return
rest.
On investment is way lower.
Exactly. You might as well just rest and do it on the next set. So that's a really good way. And I have noticed, or at least I noticed a couple weeks ago, I feel like I kind of like peaked maybe like 3 weeks ago with my finger training. So a little bit of background about me and like my fingers in climbing. They've always been my weak spot. I remember I did an assessment with Tyler, and it was hilarious. He tested my fingers, and I'm pretty sure his exact words were, I am amazed that you can climb V7. and he was like, man, everything else must be going really well for you. Like your skills are there, your technical abilities are there, the rest of your bodies are strong. Your fingers are fucking weak. And I was like, wow, this is great to know. This is a wake-up call. And I've always kind of known that. So I've done a lot of hangboard protocols. I did max hangs for multiple years. And while they felt good and I made progression in the amount of weight I could hang on the max hang, I don't remember ever once feeling like my fingers were stronger when climbing on rock, inside or outside. And I was just like, maybe, I didn't know. I just thought maybe I wouldn't feel it. So after doing 2 weeks, like maybe 4 sessions of recruitment pulls, I noticed a huge jump when I was climbing in the gym. And then I went outside and was climbing a little Cottonwood in Salt Lake City. And I think I did one V8 outside this year, working on some other ones, trying to put up some new stuff. But like my fingers just
just started too.
Yeah, and we just started. Like we'll see. This will be a good. This Red Rock trip will be a good. We'll get to see how well the finger training is working. But yeah, essentially, I noticed a definitive like improvement in my actual finger strength, and I've never noticed that before. What's your experience with it?
I think so. For me, I didn't have. So the Tindek is that device he was talking about, where you clip. Basically, you clip it between the immovable object, whatever you're moving, and whatever you're pulling on, and it reads the poundage of force in kilograms. Mm-hmm. Kilograms of force. And I didn't have that until like a week ago, and I started dabbling with the recruitment pulls maybe just after I got back from Greece, so I don't even know when that was. Sometimes in October, November-ish, early November probably. And I would just do them almost as a deadlift. I didn't have the structure or the knowledge that Alex did, so I just did them 3 times a week or so as almost like a deadlift 1 rep max, and would just do 1 set of 5 seconds, the same style that he was talking about, where I slowly from 1 to 2 seconds start to ramp up, and then for the last 3 I look hilarious because it literally trying as hard as I can to not move. It looks funny, but
when you say you did it like a deadlift, do you mean like the weight was moving?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I just mean like I was trying as hard as I would on like a 1 rep max.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, no, the weight was not moving. I was standing on it.
Gotcha.
And so I did that 3 times a week for about 2 weeks, and then started talking with him and Chelsea about their protocols, and now have migrated the past 2 weeks to almost actually identical to what Alex just said. And I'm doing mine, it is after my brief warm-up protocol in the gym, wherever I'm training, whatever, I'll do my isometric workout or warm-up, and then I'll do the recruitment pulls, and then I'll start to climb. And I've noticed in the past 2 weeks, 10 days on the moon board, and I don't know if it's actually, there's probably multiple things physiologically happening. My mind is probably wiring the ability to try that hard on my fingers more so than a physiological adaptation.
I think that's a big part of it too, yeah.
And that was one of the most illuminating things, was about a week ago, finishing that set, thinking that was my training, and then getting on the moon board and floating shit. Yeah. And I was like, I've never felt my fingers be able to do the moves on the board as easily as I had in the past, or as easily as I had in that section, which was kind of mind-blowing. We just did actually it was just funny because we both tested, I think, the same way, right? Isolated elbow.
I tested both.
And we almost are identical in our finger strength, which is pretty funny.
Well, except I weigh almost 200 pounds, and what are you at right now?
175.
Yeah, so I got your strength to body weight ratio is way higher.
Yeah, that's true. But our fingers pound for pound are the same strength. Right. So I'm not sure right now if I'm sold. I mean, from the evidence so far, it seems like it's going to work. Also, theoretically, it seems like it's going to work in a concentric motion sort of way, the theory behind it.
Right.
And then practically, it's worked really well, just physiologically speaking. And I don't really think the Tindek is necessary until you want to start to either note improvement of force on the fingers, which is like actually knowing where you're at, or rate of force, like the speed.
Right. And it definitely allows you to track because you can't really track progress by like feel necessarily. I mean, you can, but it's not accurate.
I don't think you can.
You're shooting in the dark.
Immovable object. But psychologically, it's felt exactly the same. Like, I actually don't use the measuring device unless I want to measure. I've only used it once, and I'm not going to use it probably until maybe after this trip or something. Because I like the ability of just trying to pull as hard as I can, regardless of what the numbers say. The one benefit of having the Tindek, I think, through the whole thing is really knowing when to back off.
Totally.
Because I don't. Sometimes I'm sure I'm overdoing it because I feel like I can try harder than I actually am. But that's a lot about bouldering too, and I think it depends on what your goals are. You're like sport climbing, bouldering, you just want your fingers to get strong because you don't have to read the numbers if you want to try this exercise and just try as hard as you fucking can.
Right.
You're probably not going to break anything.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
I liked what you said about the physiology of it and kind of like the mental aspect of being able to pull harder, because I think that is a huge component of it. Because when I grab a hold, so say I grab a hold and it doesn't feel good, I don't feel like I can crank down on that hold. It's kind of like it's a weak link in the chain. Like if I don't feel like I can pull myself into a good position to move off of it, I can't drive well through my feet. My core's not fully engaged.
Something
my
else
shoulder
is going to have to
compensate.
Exactly.
And it's like it just doesn't feel like a closed chain of strength. Whereas if I grab a hold and I can like bear down and actually feel like I can pull that thing up and then engage my scapula, my core is engaged, it's kind of it just changes the way I climb. I've noticed that like things before where I would have to find a weird way through where I'm like, I'm just not strong enough to like grab that hold, so I'll have to find some tricky sequence, which has always been the way I climb things. Let me find a fucking toe hook or heel hook anywhere. Now,
get the weight off my fingers.
Yeah, I just get any weight off my fingers, so I'm weak as fuck. Now it's kind of like, oh, I understand. I can move a little more dynamically. I trust in my ability to move off of this hold.
I know. I think that just to piggyback off on that is two things. Like, one, I think the crossover between trying hard and bouldering is an inevitable thing. Unless you've tried bouldering very much, you know that you have to go from 0 to 100% almost all the time. And so that is a really big plus of the Recruitment Pulls, is it teaches you how to try hard in an environment where it doesn't matter because you can't fail almost. Which is kind of funny because we were talking about failure earlier. But if I'm trying really hard on a boulder problem and I fall off, it's somewhat demoralizing because I'm going to have to try just as hard to get back on, if not harder. Whereas on the Recruitment Pull, I can just try as hard as I can, and I don't have to worry about that same sort of failure.
Right.
And then lost my train of thought.
It definitely, I think it's like equally important that it's like making your fingers stronger, like actually building recruitment. That's why they call recruitment pulls. More of the muscles in your forearms are being recruited to do the work is essentially what's happening there. And yeah, I think learning how to flip the switch and turn it on is so important. I struggle with that. I've always struggled with that, where I feel like that's a big, that is a trait that you have, where you can just fucking turn it on, try as hard as you can. I have had to really practice that skill. And Recruitment Pulls have helped me learn how to just flip the switch. I mean, also like, you know, doing strength training sessions, like heavy squats, heavy deadlifting is like really helped me learn how to just go from 0 to 100. And in bouldering, that is key. You have to know when to just flip the switch and go just fucking feral and try as hard as you can. And it's a skill that you can learn. That's just like growth mindset shit, you know, like just because you can't do it doesn't mean you can't learn how to do it. You are an adaptable animal and can learn anything.
And you're beautiful.
And you're beautiful. And you are strong.
And I think one thing about these Recruitment Pulls too, we didn't you all have no idea where we are in our training cycles, what we're training for, nor do we have any idea of what you're doing. But I think it's useful because both of us have different schedules for what we were doing. Both have implemented these techniques, and then I've seen drastic improvement already. So it's like it's something easy enough that you don't need much equipment. You can fuck around and find out right now. Do it for like 3 or 4 weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, I would say
try to assess yourself in some way, and then if you can't, I'd probably back off after 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's
something
what I was going to say too. That's what Tyler mentions too. Is that this is not something you should do like year round.
Yeah.
You should definitely, and like I tried to plan.
Nothing should be done year round.
Right. You should not just be like fucking balls to the wall. Like you need those cycles of training. Otherwise, you're going to overtrain, or you're going to get burnt out, or both, and you're going to probably maybe hurt yourself. That's how I've hurt myself, is trying to extend my performance phase for too long. Yeah. And so I kind of wish I would have timed my Recruitment Pulls a little better, because I feel like, you know, we knew this trip was happening, and I was kind of like trying to peak performance for this trip. But I think I peaked in performance a couple weeks ago, because I did notice a slight drop off after climbing outside a bit more than I normally was. But the great thing is you can have like ebbs and flows in your performance, and like, you know, I plan on this being a really good performance week. Hopefully, we'll see how it goes. Either way, it's going to be fun. And then, you know, when I get back to Salt Lake, trying to knock off a few more projects, and then I'll I'm going to try really hard this year because I've learned this. I've done this mistake multiple times, and that's how I got injured, is trying, like, you're climbing really well, you're crushing it outside, maybe you're crushing it on the moon board, and then you're like, I can just keep performing.
Yeah.
And what actually happens when you are projecting a lot, you actually get weaker. You get better at the specific projects you're doing, but your overall strength goes down because you're not stressing your body in the ways that it's going to create strength adaptations.
Totally. Yeah.
So that's why you have to be really smart about knowing when to be like, okay, don't get greedy. Just be like, fuck yeah, I had a great month of climbing. I'm going to go into a different phase of my climbing. I'm going to work on some other things, and then in a couple months, I'm going to have another performance phase that maybe lasts a month, 6 weeks, whatever. Because I've been injured that way multiple times and getting greedy.
Yeah, and especially if you're like a one modality style of person too.
Right.
Like, I get a lot of rest because I don't get a lot of time to try really hard.
Right. You don't get to boulder all year round like
exactly.
I
I think one thing that I just thought of when you said that is that understanding the interventions that you're incorporating into your training. And one thing that we should probably caveat here is I'm using training, and Alex is using training in a structured program sort of way. So when we say training, we mean we've created some sort of program for some sort amount of time that we're sticking to regardless of how we feel for about 80 to 90% of the time.
Right.
Yep. Exercising is what most people are doing most of the time. They're going in, they're working out, they're doing whatever, fucking insert whatever exercise here, and then they're going home or going climbing, and then just kind of willy-nilly doing it.
Right.
And lots of people are really good at exercising and really bad at training. And so if you want to actually take a training protocol on, I would say start very simple with maybe only 1 or 2 exercises that you can keep doing it consistently for 3 weeks of time or whatever that is to start. Because those are where we're going to see the most drastic improvements on whatever modality type of climbing you're doing or whatever the exercise is. And so you have to be very specific, because not everybody, unless you're a professional fucking athlete, then you don't have to worry about this and someone's coaching you anyways. But you don't have the time to get better at everything all at once. And so for me, just like a little window into how I've approached training recently with the Recruitment Pulls is I work, my summer season basically ended in August, September, went to Horseshoe Hell, and then I started my season basically the end of September, early October, I went to Greece for a week and went rock climbing. And so when I came back, I needed some sort of interventions to make my performance on the rock better. And there's a lot of ways that people, and I'll keep this pretty short, but I think for people thinking about training, there's a lot of interventions we can do. We can do sport-specific interventions, highly like this recruitment pull is very sport-specific to climbing. We could do strength training interventions, which is like moving big objects in certain ways to make my body actually stronger. Or I could just do climbing and get better at the efficiency of actually climbing and working on the wall. And I think people miss that a lot. I see lots of people who are very strong, who don't climb well, who think all they need to do is go train more.
Get stronger.
And it's exactly the opposite. All they need to do is go live on rocks for a while and learn how. It's not even an install. It's just you just have to learn to dance on the rock better than you currently can.
Right.
And so I think climbing is somewhat unique, and that's why I fall in love with it. Is because there's so many facets that we can dive into and get better at as the sport generally. And so for me, I'm pretty good at rock climbing. I've been climbing for a really long time.
I've been at it, for
14 years. Yeah, I mean, a lot of pad people climbing, a lot of bouldering. So I can tend to move pretty well on rock, generally. My technique is okay. I also have a pretty good base of physical ability from my work. and from just climbing all the time. So I need very specific interventions if I'm going to spend time to improve my climbing on the wall. So what I did is I said, okay, I'm going to focus on isometric training for my upper body, weighted pull-ups, and recruitment pulls. And those are the only 3 exercises that I'm going to train for like 5 to 6 weeks of time with like recovery weeks in between. And those are the only 3 things I've been doing since then. And I mean, I just fucking rage on the moon board for like 2 days straight and felt stronger than I ever have, which is pretty awesome.
And we're about to rage on some
hopefully
quality
we can
sandstone board.
Rage on some quality sandstone.
We got a good list.
So I just say that because recruitment pulls are probably going to work well for you regardless of where you are, because it translates so well to the sport of climbing.
Yeah.
But before you just like dive into a training regimen of deadlifting for fucking ever, just make sure you're doing it for a reason, that you have a structure, and that you have a certain amount of time dedicated to it, and not add forever.
Right. And so let's just say somebody goes and they exercise a couple times a week. I love what you said too about people are really good at exercising and really bad at training, because it's so true. I see it all the time in like my work with clients. Like, people want to do it and they're good at getting themselves there, but when it comes to actually doing something, it's either not hard enough, or they don't stick with it, or they change it too much, which is kind of the same thing. So something I would recommend, and like, you know,
almost always is not hard enough.
Oh yeah. That's like the fucking thing that
i.e. what I'm doing in my exercises as I'm a client is that I'm not working hard enough. This feels too easy.
Yep. And so like both of us have experience in training. I am a personal trainer. I run my own strength coaching company, and so I work with clients, essentially just teaching them the basics of how to train and what strength training is. And so if I was somebody just coming in and like say, I go to the gym a couple times a week and I just do whatever I feel like doing, which is something that I used to do all the time, is just go in and be like, ooh, what do I feel like doing today? And I always wanted it to be diverse, and I wanted to mix it up because that's way more fun. The reality is that's a really shitty way of training. And you are going to see some progress, but it is going to be super minimal compared to if you have a dedicated plan that you stick to for a certain block of time. So general strength is a great place to start. And you can do that in so many ways. Weightlifting is fucking awesome. There's so much evidence and studies that have been done that show that it's one of the most beneficial things you can do as a human for your body, for your physical and mental health. So I would suggest general strength training. Learning how to deadlift is great. Learning how to squat is great. I kind of like starting people with the big 3: deadlift, bench, squat. A lot of people maybe see those as like outdated or like antiquated. They have so much use throughout all sports. So basically, when you're doing a general strength training, say you're going to do this for 2-3 months, like you just want a good baseline of fitness, you want to just up your strength game. This is a great place to start. There's some concepts that are really helpful to know if you're training hard enough. And like, honestly, I would just suggest getting a trainer, i.e. me or George. Oh my god, crazy.
Crazy.
But you definitely don't want to
That'll be the easiest. That's the easiest way.
Right.
Sure.
You definitely don't want to sort of throw yourself into something.
Not in strength training.
But you do want it to be hard enough that you are making measurable progress. And so there's a kind of a fine line that you have to reach there, and having a trainer that's like knowledgeable and communicates well is going to be good to help you figure out where you should be in your strength training.
And hopefully align your goals.
Dude, absolutely. It's so helpful to have a coach. Like,
if not only to like almost insert your program here, like going through a true training block regimen of, what did you say, 2 to 3 months? 8 to 12 weeks, 12 to 16. If you're doing bigger mountain programming, you're gonna be more in the 16 to 20 to 24 even months, because a lot of endurance shit takes forever. But you should probably, if you've never trained before, I don't think it would ever hurt you just to get on a training program, because it teaches you so much about structure, efficiency of time, working out when you don't feel like you should work out.
Yeah, just getting your ass in the gym.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I think the
Absolutely.
biggest pro, almost, besides the gains that you'll see in whatever your exercises are, is the behavior modification of teaching you how to do it to yourself in the future. Because it's all about getting better all the time.
Yep.
And so once I did, back in the day, my first like true 24 week strength or training regime, it was easy to now just adapt, understand a little bit more about whatever said thing you're doing and continue to make protocols or go back to your coaches for more fucking training.
And it really does become like that's what I try to instill in people, is that like, this is a lifestyle change we're trying to create. This is not just like something you're gonna do for a couple months and then you're gonna be like, oh my god, my body's perfect, I feel strong, and then you're gonna stop doing it.
Yeah.
We are trying to change your behavior and kind of make you fall in love with this idea of working hard and progressing your body. And that's really it. And like, it tends to happen with every client I work with, is they start off hating it, and then there's eventually something clicks after a few months where they want to be there,
Yeah.
And so if you can really put your head down and push through those first, the difficult times where you're like, oh, I don't want to fucking be there. I don't want to go to the gym after work. This sucks. I'm tired. And you just do it. I guarantee you, you're going to feel better.
It's almost
afterward.
like walking in the door, or like 7 minutes in or 12 minutes into whatever you were supposed to, dreading beyond the worst calamity you could have imagined. It's like, oh, this is actually nice.
This is great.
This is great.
Yeah,
and that'd be a great time, actually.
And then you get that like dopamine rush when you're finished because you've completed something that you didn't necessarily want to do. And it's just all around great for physical, mental health, spiritual health, even if you want to get into that. Because I
think they're all interrelated.
Totally.
Honestly.
I would be a shitty person if I didn't have this in my life.
Oh my god, the outlets that I don't even realize how much emotional or just stress related dispersion that I get from the random activities that I get to do all the time.
How often do you get to try as hard as you can? Like, rarely. Rarely do people do that. Most people don't fucking do that. And so, like,
we were actually talking about this earlier. Most people don't even start trying, let alone try as hard as they can.
Right? And so, like, do you want to be one of those people that just, like, doesn't try because it's hard? Or do you want to be one of the people that's like, no, fuck it, I'm a badass. I'm going to try. Even if it's really hard, I'm going to see my way through it. And I'm going to come out better on the other side. It's like, you definitely want to be that type of person.
And it's, like, always in manageable sections. It's not like, oh, I've signed up for a 20-week training program. How will I ever get there? It's like tomorrow's the first day. Like, and
it takes a step.
Yeah,
just
one step at a time.
Just fucking do it.
And everything will translate. Like, there's something so alike the feeling of me recruitment pulling as hard as I can, as well as like 1 rep maxing on my pull-ups.
Yeah.
Like I'm moving a fucking 140 pounds, or I'm not moving anything with just my fingers. And it really doesn't matter experientially, because it feels like I'm trying as hard as I can.
Right. And it's pretty amazing to like unearth that in yourself. Like, you will surprise yourself at how strong you actually are.
And then that correlates to some of the other avenues
Oh
of
my
life.
god. Yeah, you start viewing other things and you're like, well, I didn't think I
did that.
deadlift 400 pounds, but I was able to do that. So like,
and then before long, you decided to become certain because you can't have access to a bathroom.
Yeah.
Man, I
Random
deadlifted.
tangent.
Yeah. I deadlifted so hard so many years ago. I could do anything.
So to talk about the homeless population,
Salt Lake City is pretty bad.
It goes into a total side tangent of politics that we.
No, I guess before we go there, I do want to cover isometrics, just in the sense that I've been practicing them, and then your take on them will be new to me. It'll probably spark some more conversation. But Chelsea would do this as a warm-up routine, and probably I think she gave it to me last winter. Might have been the first time I did it. And I've been doing them a lot. And so essentially what I'll do for my warm-up and this kind of like build block. So I talked about the three things I'm doing right now. It's isometric, these pulls that I'm about to talk about, recruitment pulls, and my 1-rep max are the things that I'm dedicated to in the past 6 weeks or so to just focus on. A lot of other stuff I do, but that's willy-nilly now. And so I'll warm up at the gym, and then once I feel pretty good, it's, 10 seconds on, 20 seconds off, 4 times. Sorry, I will redo that. It's 10 seconds on, 20 seconds off, and it's isometric holds in 4 positions. The first position is, it doesn't matter what order you go in, but there are 4 different positions to go in. And so it's 90-degree chin up. So palms forward, or palms towards your face, 90-degree hold. 10 seconds on, 20 seconds off. Next hold would be palms out, so like a traditional pull-up style, 90 degrees, 10 seconds on, 20 seconds off. The next style would be palm in, 120 degrees, 10 on, 20 off, and then palm out at 120 degrees. And I go through 2 sets of those 4 exercises with no breaks. So 10 seconds on, 20 seconds off through all 4 of those exercises, each twice. So it's 8 sets.
I bet this came from Tyler when she did my rehab,
yeah,
because that's exactly what he had me do as warm-ups. Yep.
So I did that for a while, maybe 2 weeks or so, a full week at least without weight. And then now I just slowly have started building weight onto that. And right now I'm at like 35, 40 pounds in those same positions, just for that exact same amount of time. And I'll do that twice a week with weight and once a week without weight. And that seems to be helping. At least it helps my tendonitis, it seems like, a lot.
Yeah, the isometrics are great for
yeah, because I don't feel my tendonitis. It's also in the warm-up, so it feels like it gets me primed to fucking slay.
Yep.
And then right after that, 3 minutes rest, and then I'll do my recruitment pulls. And that like really warms my fingers up to get ready to rage. But that was a really simple intervention for me that I've kept for, months and months now. That seems to transfer pretty well and help me reduce my tendonitis.
I like the isometrics I use a lot as a warm up as well. So I'll do recruitment pulls actually as a warm up. I usually don't go as hard as I would if I was testing or doing it as like a training thing, but I'll use that as a warm up. And then I'll also do isometric pulls. I tend to do one arm on the rings where my feet don't necessarily come off the ground, but I'll do 90 degrees and 120 degrees on both arms just with one arm. So we're doing kind of similar, same thing, except mine is going to be a little more like I'm not able to really fully pull until recently. I haven't been able to pull my feet off the ground. So the reason that I do isometrics is because so many climbers think that like just doing pull-ups is going to help their climbing, and while it might not necessarily hurt your climbing,
depends on how many pull-ups you can do.
Yeah, and then and that's the thing. It's like if you're doing pull-ups without weight and you're just doing like 20 pull-ups, I mean that kind of gets into like rep schemes and like the intensity. Like that's just not enough stress on your muscles to actually make you better at pulling. Like it's just doing 30 pull-ups is like sick, dude. You kind of like did an endurance pulling.
Yeah, there's almost no, I don't want to say there's no strength involved, but one thing a little bit that changed for me when I thought about strength and power and kind of like how to find the line between like, am I building my actual muscle capacity to move objects heavier, or am I adapting my current body to work better as it is? And those are 2 tangents that we won't really go into, but one thing that I think help for me when I'm thinking about building pure strength is moving objects, but the rate of movement is actually quite slow. Yeah. So like if I'm busting out 20 pull-ups in a minute and a half because I'm just busting the reps out, that means I have plenty of strength to do the pull-up because I'm doing them back to back to back to back. So it's not really doing anything. It's probably just hurting you in the long run.
You're probably just adding more fatigue that you don't need.
Whereas like for me, it's like I want to focus on my pull muscle. I'm going to strap a fuck ton of weight on my body.
It's just way more efficient.
Because I can't. I'm moving so slow through space, and I only have to do one.
Right. That's the thing. And like I think it just comes down to efficiency.
Yeah, it really does.
Like, would you rather do 3 sets of 30 pull-ups, or do you want to do 3 sets of 5 pull-ups with some weight on you?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it just has weight. It like stresses your muscles in a way that actually builds strength.
Yeah. So I think one thing to take away from that is like, if you think you're strength training, you should probably be moving whatever it is that you're moving, i.e. it could be your body. If you can barely do a pull-up, then doing just a pull-up, if you could actually pull it off, is probably one of the better things you could do.
Oh yeah.
Because you're actually still moving.
Definitely.
But if you're like moving whatever it is really fast or a lot of reps, that's not really strength training.
Yeah. And I'd say like for beginner climbers, like if you're just getting into it, or like you can't do like 5 to 10 pull-ups, it's probably a good idea to maybe work in some pull-ups. Do some pull-ups. But if you're like I can't even remember the last time I tested my pull-ups. I could probably do an absurd amount. We don't need to know. So if you're kind of more in that intermediate stage of climbing, you've been climbing for a few years, then I think it's time to like I don't really do weighted pull-ups. I don't do a lot of pull work in general because I feel like I get so much from climbing that I don't need to do it necessarily, but I don't think it's a bad thing to do. I might cycle it in at some point. But if you're like in that intermediate stage with your climbing training, definitely try throwing some weight on there. And making it hard.
Totally.
You know? Yeah. You don't want it to, like, when you're doing 30 pull-ups or 20 pull-ups or whatever, you're going to get that burn that you feel, but that's not from your muscles actually having to, we won't get into like the physiological shit, but like put some weight on and try to like make it harder.
And like I think that was great advice too. And I probably wouldn't it depends on how you climb. And so fucking record yourself, watch yourself climbing if you don't know how, because it depends on what it is. For me in this regime, I want to eat my cake and have it too, because I didn't have the time to build a platform of muscle. I just want to take what I have now and have it work as best that I can.
Yep.
And so it's the fastest way for me to be like, okay, I can know how to pull again.
Right. I have a good prompt if we're kind of done with that tangent about climbing still.
Yeah.
So in regards to just pure climbing, so let's just take bouldering for example.
The purest form of climbing. The purest
form of climbing. It is like sex with their form. Edit that out. I was trying to do a friend Nicole and that was terrible.
Yeah.
So when it comes to bouldering, or just pure climbing movement, what do you feel like are your main weaknesses, and how, and let's tell people how you have attacked those weaknesses. What has your strategy been at trying to change that from a weakness into maybe a strength?
Well, it's going to be a little bit more multifaceted because I do a lot of types of climbing.
Yeah, let's maybe we can focus on like bouldering, or I guess we could take it wherever. But like, I was thinking about just like pure climbing movements, like.
Yeah. I mean, true.
But we could take it wherever.
Specifically. Well, I think one big barrier that I've had in the past for climbing really hard is attempting to climb really hard. So you can't send the hard things unless you try the hard things. It took me many years to understand that I should just be trying harder stuff.
Yeah, totally. It's scary.
It's scary. You don't even know what you're gonna do. You might not be able to make a move, but you also might surprise yourself.
Yeah.
And be stronger. And there's no way to progress unless you push the boundary from where you were before. Yep. So I think that's one big thing, is I've been stalled for a while at like just running through the grades because I didn't think I was ready yet.
There's nothing wrong with building your pyramid and, you know, getting a lot of volume of like climbs that are not at your limit, but are like making you a better climber. There's nothing wrong with that. But at some
I think
point
if we're talking pure bouldering, I think all it's about is sitting as hard as you can.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, that's what bouldering is for me, is like the exquisiteness of the movement that it requires, or the power, finesse, the whole shebang. I think for me, always, because I ebb and flow at the intensity that I'm climbing, fingers are always something that I can work on, because rarely do I keep the capacity of my fingers through the whole year, right? Like, for 5 months in the summer, I don't even fucking pull hard at all.
Yeah.
And so it takes me a while, so I'm always training my fingers. But rarely, most of the time, I've now migrated to just training on smaller holes.
Yep.
And I think that was one big thing for me in the past, was the moon board was a specific tool that is steep and typically has smaller holds. And so it let me climb quicker through the grades, because it was just forcing me to do things on smaller holds that I wasn't. Because if I'm walking through the gym, I like to be powerful and jump around. I'm naturally going to look for the lines that are going to be jump around and powerful.
That look cool as fuck.
That look cool as fuck.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I feel like I can do that, so I'll be like, oh, I can flash this bitch. Boom, throw it down, and then move on. Whereas like having a training tool like the moon board or insert tool here, I think the tension board is a sweet idea, and I haven't spent enough time on it, but only for the ability to mirror.
Yeah.
Not to use it like a moon board, but to use it like a tension board.
Totally.
And I just haven't. They are their own thing.
Yep.
Like, you should mirror. I think if I was going to do it as your regime, which I might when I settle down a little bit, is like start at the base, build the pyramid, and mirror everything that I climb.
Yeah, that's what I tried to do when I worked
see the
for a couple of years ago. Yeah.
One thing that is typically lacking for me is my toe hooking ability. Not necessarily my heels, but my toe hooking ability.
I would say your heels maybe as well. I think you're pretty good, but it's like it's not super flexible.
Typically, my inflexibility is probably one of my worst.
That's what I was going to add if you didn't add it.
Oh no, I would definitely add it. But it's one of the only
mobility.
Attributes that I don't work on.
Right.
Yeah.
Which the only way to change it.
Yeah. But specifically is vertical spine, or like standing, lifting my foot straight up. So like imagine
it's
if
like
you lift your foot up, and then your knees at 90 degrees.
Oh, never mind.
And then you keep pulling your knee up higher.
Yeah.
And so basically, I bet my cap out is probably somewhere around 90 degrees. Like my left foot would probably not be able to go over my knee. Whereas a lot of really strong climbers, Brandon, I've been climbing with him considerably, like he can put his, with a straight back, I bet he can put his foot by his scrotum, almost. Just like straight up. You can probably do
I mean, I can pretty much, like, wherever my hands are at, I can probably get my I can pretty much hand flip that.
Yeah, so no, not about that. And the reason that I haven't trained it much is because I, one, haven't had a structure.
Right.
And it's like shooting in the dark. And I'm really bad about asking for help.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I was just like, okay, well, I'll just use, like, manipulate objects and lean on them to raise my foot, or try to put my foot on objects higher and higher, which works, but also just takes a lot of training.
Right, and it's like one of those things you just gotta be consistent with, and if it's you're not consistent with it.
And it's like the most unsexy shit.
Yeah, dude, training for like mobility shit sucks. It's like training for endurance.
It is. I've
like
done my endurance training too, and it's heinous.
It's like arcing.
But
nobody wants to do that.
If I could probably do much better at bouldering if I had a better flexibility in my. I don't even know what it is. If it's my lower back or my hip or.
I mean, it's probably
multiple. It's probably the whole hodgepodge.
But you're still able to climb things, because that's the beauty of climbing, is there's not one way to do it. There's not one best way to do it. And like the amount of times we've gone and like one of us is sent first and then the next person sent it with different beta.
I think it's really a lot of it is mental. I think more so than anything else, because nothing else has changed in the environment except one of us, and that's happened multiple times.
Oh yeah.
Where like one person goes, and then it's like, well, now it's
possible. Because I think we realized that like like I think you realize like, oh, if I can send something, you can send it, and I'm not vice versa. I'm like, if George can send it, unless it's a fucking dino, I'm like, oh, maybe I can find a weird way to get it. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's awesome. So I would say for me, a huge weakness. We've already talked about fingers. Finger strength has been a huge weakness of mine. That's like glaring. Also, the ability to like, because I'm a little bit taller than you and have a slightly larger ape index. So, and we have just completely different climbing styles. Whereas George fucking is like you have, I think, shorter legs and pretty long arms, so you can kind of get into bunchy positions and explode out of it. You're really powerful. You've always been powerful. I remember you canvassing shit in like our first couple years of climbing, and I couldn't even there's no fucking way I could ever canvass this thing. Whereas I come from I think my background with like yoga really helped me in like certain aspects of like dance and movement, like really made it to where I wanted to make my movement more dancey and like use my entire body. I hate jumping to things. Yeah. Not so much anymore, but I'm just like, I would rather do a really fucking weird foot switch, toe hook, and just bat hanger, something that's just really weird that doesn't normally work for other people. That's how I climb things.
You know what's funny about that too, now that we've been talking about it, is that one thing that's definitely reinforcing that, probably from the very get-go, was my ability to try as hard as I can right off the bat, and maybe that advantage in power, right?
Yeah, totally.
Whereas like if you said it takes a very long time for you to get into the mindset of really turning it on, then you're going to try to make the climbing easier.
Totally.
So you don't have to try as hard.
Yeah, that's kind of usually my goal. Is like
make it easier. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've noticed this is kind of a part of my climbing. If there's a move that is really hard, I will try to find any way to not do it.
Yeah, totally.
And I usually can find a way to make it not that move. Or I'll just be like, fuck it, I'll just do it this other way. Like, I don't know. I'm always going to try to find the easiest way, which is like good for sending, but not necessarily good for progressing myself as a climber. And so that's what I try to do in the gym now. If I can find a beta break, I'll break the beta and be like, fuck it, I'm going to do it my way. And then I'll go back and say, okay, now I have to do it the hard boy way. Yeah. Although I don't do it all the time, I should probably do it more. But like, when you're performing, it doesn't fucking matter. No. You're just trying to sing, and that's what's awesome about it. Like on this trip, I'll probably try to break beta for
you. Fucking skip some holds.
Dude, I'd be skipping holds for sure, dude. I don't even have that much of an ape index, but if I can skip holds, fuck that.
I will say one thing is that I've climbed with a lot of different people, and you have some of the best footwork ever.
Aww, thank you.
Cool.
Thank you. I have always had better footwork than I've had any type of strength at all. I remember multiple times people telling me that I climb more like a woman than I climb like a man, definitely. As like a derogatory thing, and I was just like, dude, have you watched a woman climb? It's fucking beautiful. Yeah. And I think wanting it, I think again that like background in yoga and dance where it's very flowy and there's like it's not climbing robotic, it's like trying to make it all one thing. Yeah, has been a huge part of climbing. I love it when it feels hard, but it also flows and there's no like hiccups in the movement. Yeah.
It's funny when you explain it like that too, is because I feel like that's one of my favorite things to do. Mm-hmm. But the style is so drastically different. But the experiential feeling of the flow and the effortlessness between the moves is kind of cool. Because so like nice. You might be like, back step, toe hook, switch into a heel, drop into something else. Yeah. And I might be like, oh, I'm just going to grab this hold and jump to the other hold. Yep. And it feels similar.
We're getting the same experience just in a different way. Yeah. It's kind of amazing.
I think one thing that we should talk about is like tidbits or tricks that you feel like either that you've done or that you've helped people do that's actually made difference for their, like, improve their climbing in some way. And I think the one thing that struck out in my mind when I said that was linking it back almost to the try hard, like getting into the mind state of try hard. Yeah. And sometimes it's just hard to get into it. Like the ability, turning it on. I mean, having a try hard isn't the hard part. It's bringing the try hard out.
Yes, unearthing it.
Unearthing the try hard, exactly.
Totally.
And so something that I started really young in my climbing career that I still tell certain people who need that is find your free throw dribble.
Mm-hmm.
Like NBA players or whoever, fucking anybody who plays basketball probably has a certain, typically, or I did when I played basketball, has a certain rhythm to free throws where they'll maybe backsplit the basketball once and dribble twice and then shoot. And they might repeat that sequence every single time to get their body primed for whatever it is that they're doing.
Yep.
And I like to help people be like, find your free throw. And so like if you're bouldering and you're sitting down underneath your problem, it can be something ridiculously stupid. Like mine was like chalk up with your eyes closed, breathe, move the chalk bucket, chalk up again, and go.
Yep.
Like something super simple that you can just habituate to be like, okay, now my body knows that it's time to do work.
Hell yeah. I love that. Mine is, yeah, I think you definitely inspired a lot of that too. Because I have like just a breath thing I do right before I pull on. It's just a forceful,
Yeah.
That's it. And like I can just sink into that flow state. It's almost just like you're opening the door to the flow state. You're just like, and
here we go.
Serious.
Yeah.
And I kind of attribute mine to like when I played, because I played baseball more than I played basketball. And like, you know how once you're in the batter's box, everybody had like a thing. You would tap the bat, you would tap your cleats. Mine was the same every time.
The ritual.
Tap, tap. I did this same thing every time.
Yeah.
And it just, it's just a way, it's almost like a weird,
it's a primer.
it feels like weirdly shamanic or like magic. Yeah, where you're just like, there's so much intention around it, you're just like sinking.
Yep.
Boom, I'm here.
Yep.
That's fucking cool.
I mean, kind of. It's like, it is setting an intention, more or less. It's almost like going in for a psychedelic experience. So
Absolutely.
like, I gotta set the stage, fucking get things ready.
Light my sage.
Here we go.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like I'm the way I like to support other climbers. I feel like I'm almost better at that than climbing. Is like giving people the positive feedback and like getting them to try hard.
Yeah, get them
like
psyched.
In the moment as they're climbing. Some people don't like that, but a lot of people really do. Of just like fucking come on, like you know what to do. Get the foot on, like stick the foot, pull down with the heel. You know, it's like all the the little subtleties and just reminding people, like, especially with you too, because
so
you're not the best at remembering your beta
or breathing or anything.
Or you black out and just try as hard as you can, which is fucking cool. And I wish I could do it sometimes, but the amount of times that we've been projecting something and you will do it one way and then jump immediately on and do it a completely different way, and I'm just like, George, do you remember your beta? And you're like, no, I have no fucking clue. And so I think, and it just depends on your client.
Yeah.
Like we make a really good team because I think you help me get really fucking psyched, and I help you remember your beta.
When you hear it, it's almost like I definitely hear it, but it's not like I'm listening. That's
right. Oh yeah.
Weird. Like,
no, totally.
It's a remind. It's almost like a thought from another head.
Yeah.
You know, it's like which is no different than thoughts in my own head.
Right.
They just come out of nowhere and go to nowhere.
Right.
But it's almost what it feels when I'm on the wall, because it's like it'll be like breathe, and you're like, oh yeah.
Oh right. I should really be breathing here. Yeah. Because you don't really notice it in the moment.
No.
But you're intaking all of it. It's really cool. I feel like that was probably the best way that I feel like I've helped other climbers. And I don't know, I feel like one of my strengths is figuring out beta. That's one of my favorite parts, is like the problem solving. You've never climbed it before, maybe you're sussing out some moves, and then like trying to figure out the way to do it.
So you're gonna flash some of these things?
I mean, I've never touched found. I'm not gonna. I mean, I don't like to look at it as like I can't flash that, but
no. What we're gonna say is we're gonna try to flash.
We are gonna try as hard as I can to flash.
Yes.
And like
that is one of my favorite fucking things in the world.
Yeah.
Keep going.
I just still not. I tend to not try hard on my flash attempt, which I need to get better at, because it's like, if you flash a fucking V9, I would be so psyched. Or if I flashed a V7, I'd feel psyched. Like, you know. So, we'll give it a shot. There's a lot of things we haven't touched that I think I have a good shot at Mr. Moran, which is like a sloping V7 kind of lip traverse, which is like, I'm really good at lip traverses because I can milk a fucking heel and toe hook. It's like a Lexusizer, but a harder top out. Yeah. And I can shit on a Lexusizer. Yeah, which is a dope V6. Hilarious. And oh my God, it's one of my favorites too, because there's so many, like, the beta, you just have to remember like a